Welcome, everyone. Welcome, everybody, to Mexican Crossing Lines with your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp.
And Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM, KPPPLP, Fargo Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. I'm your host, Cindy Gomez-Schempp, and with me is
Duke Gomez-Schempp.
And this is a Mexican Crossing Lines. Tonight, we are talking about finding balance. Finding balance in our lives, finding balance in our work, but most especially in how we take in information about the coronavirus, not just here in our country, but around the world. There's a lot of different takes. There are a lot of different ways. There are many different solutions. There are a lot of different things people are talking about doing. And there seems to be this extreme on either side of on all sides of the discussion, where people really they're reacting very emotionally to what's happening, and I get it. Things are very tense. There's been a lot of confusion. People have been pent up for 8 weeks, in some cases longer, in some cases less. And there's a lot of pent up emotions, a lot of upset feelings. In fact, as I speak to you now from our home studio here in Moorhead, Minnesota, there is still a tense police standoff with a home that's just behind us, just behind our home. Duke, you were telling me something about that place earlier. The neighbor mentioned to you that it had been turned it from a rental into some kind of a halfway house or something like that?
Transitional housing, which is not really a halfway house, but it's
something like that, right? Isn't that
no,
what
it's a home that's basically rented to people transitioning out of the shelters. And my neighbor told me that there's we had college students in there before, and they came out and just did bonfires and stuff. They had parties though, and they got they had rowdy stuff happening. They had cops come there all the time and haul people away, and then
not in handcuffs.
I don't know how they did. There were people jumping out of windows, all sorts of stuff one night. We never saw it, which is our neighbor tells me about it.
Yeah.
And these people have, I guess there's been law enforcement there quite often. So.
Since they put it into transitional housing, there's been a lot of arrests.
Yeah.
I did not know that. I thought you were talking about the college students. I mean, I remember them having parties back there and being a little bit loud.
Oh, they got arrested. They got busted a lot too.
I remember the cops coming over there because, but since it's been turned into a transitional housing, there have been more arrests. Mm-hmm. Today there is a tense standoff with lots of cops all around the block. And ambulances. 2 people were carried off in handcuffs. Lots of officers with long guns patrolling the area in our neighbors' backyards and on the street front. I shared a live video. Then I hauled my cookies in here to get ready for our live broadcast.
Exactly.
So, and you know what? As I said in my live video, the crime has really, the level of crime with police and guns and people shooting each other and that kind of thing, it feels like it's amped up since the pandemic. Don't you think, Duke?
Oh, yeah, definitely has.
I just feel like, we need to find our inner balance as human beings, and we need to find a balance in how we are dealing with this pandemic, especially in order to avoid these kinds of escalations of danger and things like that. So thank you for joining us tonight to have this discussion. I'm going to be sharing a lot of news, local, nationwide and even worldwide about what's going on with the pandemic today, May 20th. I hope you guys are having a very blessed day. It's a beautiful day here in Moorhead, Minnesota, albeit for this weird standoff that's happening, armed standoff that appears to be going on outside of our home. But I do want to thank all of you who have sent me comments, questions, and that have been following and supporting our independent media station here in the Moorhead, Fargo region.
Yes, the Red River Valley, as I call it, It's a beautiful night out tonight. Our backyard is lush and green. It's Minnesota weather. No bugs yet. Soon there'll be mosquitoes, and that'll be a hassle. I don't know if they carry COVID. Someone let me know. Welcome to the program. I hope everything's going well. Thank you for sharing all the information you share with us. And if you would like to send more or keep in contact with us, there's many ways to do it. I'm just going to run through all the different ways. You can do email, Cindy at kpppfm.com, me, Duke at kpppfm.com. You can call our message line there at the bottom of the screen, 701-566-0917, 701-566-0917. You can leave a message up to 3 minutes. Over on YouTube, we're streaming also. We're at Duke 1517 is the name of the channel. On Facebook, we're streaming also. We're at FM 88.1 Fargo Moorhead. And we also have Mexi-Can and the People's Press Project. You can tweet us at media_PPP, and you can go to kpppfm.com and have a look around at our main website, at our programming, at our history. And also, if you'd like to support us by making a tax-deductible contribution, you can go to that website. Go to kpppfm.com/donate, make a tax-deductible contribution to our nonprofit radio station here in the Red River Valley. Enjoy the show tonight, folks.
Yes, and thank you very much for all of your input. Let's go to the world numbers. Currently, in the whole world, we have 4,955,312 cases, 955,312 cases. Global deaths are up to 325,810. In the United States alone, we have 1,591,475 cases, 94,937 deaths, and 370,076 recovered cases. We still have increasing number of deaths, even in states like New York, and New Jersey, where they had 168 and 156 new cases, respectively. States all around the country, even as we're reopening, are having some increases in certain counties, although not always in every county. Some places do have some declines, while other places have some hot spots. Mm-hmm. What's going on in Minnesota, Duke?
Well, Minnesota is on the increase. We've had 29 newly reported deaths in the past day. Mm-hmm. We've had 645 newly reported cases. Total positive cases are 17,670. And over here on the county map, our county is at 328. It continues to go up. We've only had 20 deaths in Cass County, but and we're right next to Fargo. But we're very high compared to all the other communities in this region. It's mostly around Minneapolis, and the bigger urban area in Minnesota is Minneapolis, and that's where most of the cases are. But we're equivalent to a lot of the cases in those counties too. So it's not really good for Minnesota. And our governor is going to do some openings of more things, but is being very cautious, which I think is good.
Yes, I do agree with you. I think that they're, they have to find that balance, the governors do. Yeah. That fine line. And I know that a lot of governors have been getting a lot of guff, especially our Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. And I appreciate and I also understand the frustration of business owners, of people who just want to get out and do their own thing, who are grown adults, many of them healthy as a horse and not a care in the world, and they don't feel like it's fair that people that are completely healthy are being forced to quarantine, while businesses in every state are being forced to shutter their doors with threats of fines here in Minnesota. Many businesses have been getting threatened by the Minnesota AG with fines up to $25,000 if they open up their businesses. So I just feel bad for anybody in leadership at this time, whether it's at the federal level or whether it's at the state level, because they have to find this balance, you know? They got to walk this fine line between saving lives and keeping the economy alive. And it is a delicate dance. Take, for instance, the pressure that our governor here in Minnesota is dealing with, where we have nurses at this stage of this fight saying that they're maxed out. The nurses in Minnesota have said to lawmakers that the shortages of masks and other protective health gear has changed the standards in many hospitals, and nurses must now reuse face masks and other items, which they weren't doing here in Minnesota. The virus has already sickened 1,500 nurses, according to the Minnesota Nurses Association. I want you to take a look at this video from Fox 9 News, in which they're talking about the pressures that they're under. That's the McEnany video. We're talking about the Minnesota nurses. That's Iowa. It's Minnesota.
Oh, remember we couldn't get that one?
Oh, that's right.
Sorry.
We couldn't. That's okay. I didn't know that it was unable to play. Well, I just want to share with you that I understand how difficult it is for the governor to make decisions when he has nurses in the state telling him that 1,949 Minnesota healthcare workers have tested positive for the coronavirus. And nurses have raised concern about how they've been cared for. By the way, they're not blaming the state of Minnesota entirely. They are saying, and I quote, the CDC failed us. The hospital system failed us. The federal and state governments also failed us. Kira Spike, a nurse at St. Joseph's Hospital, told lawmakers on Tuesday afternoon hearings. Spike said that she was forced to distance herself from her family at home out of fear of spreading the virus, and another nurse said she was forced to place her protective mask in a bag and reuse it day after day. In the past, of course, nurses got new respiratory masks every day, but now hospital systems are conserving protective equipment because of disruptions in the supply chain and uncertainty over availability of gear. And of course, Minnesota's situation has made people decide to buy rain ponchos for public health workers.
Really?
In order for them to have the protective gear that they need. Nobody wants a situation like this, least of all the governors. And one thing I would challenge people to think about in this situation is the liability that the governors face if they don't do all of their due diligence in warning businesses about violations. I think that they have to cover their own behinds in this whole process, which is why in many cases they may be forcing people to take them to court. And of course, that isn't something every business owner can afford, but there are a lot of business owners out there who are fighting to have the right to keep their businesses open during the pandemic. And also, the press secretary for President Trump blasted back at a press house briefing and discussed the president's use of hydroxychloroquine. This is what Ms. McEnany had to say.
hydroxychloroquine has been a drug that has been in use for 65 years for lupus, arthritis, and malaria. It has a very good safety profile, but as with any drug and as with any prescription, it should be given by a doctor to a patient in that context. So no one should be taking this without a prescription from their doctor. But that being said, I've seen a lot of apoplectic coverage of hydroxychloroquine. You had Jimmy Kimmel saying the president's, quote, trying to kill himself by taking it. You had Joe Scarborough saying, quote, this will kill you. Neil Cavuto saying, what have you got to lose? One thing you have to lose are lives. And you had Chris Cuomo saying the president knows that hydroxychloroquine is not supported by science. He knows it has been flagged by his own people, and he's using it. Well, Cuomo mocked the president for this. And interestingly, I found this out just before coming here. Hydroxychloroquine, of course, is an FDA-approved medication with a long proven track record for safety. And it turns out that Chris Cuomo took a less safe version of it called quinine, which the FDA removed from the market in 2006 because of its serious side effects, including death. So really interesting to have that criticism of the president. And on that note to Chris Cuomo, I'd like to redirect him to his brother, the governor of New York, Governor Cuomo, who has several on-the-record statements about hydroxychloroquine, saying, I'm an optimist, I'm hopeful about the drug, and that's why we'll try it here in New York as soon as we get it. There has been anecdotal evidence that it's promising, that's why we're going ahead, and I have about 8 other quotes from Governor Cuomo, should any of you have interest in that.
You just cited our studies, though. They're trials that are in their early phases. Do you have any evidence that thousands of frontline workers are currently using it because they believe it actually will prevent them?
Well, as I mentioned, missionaries use this, especially when going to countries where there is malaria, as a prophylactic for malaria. But I have heard and seen myself many anecdotal stories of people, specifically some actors. There was an Asian actor from New York. I can't remember what kind of a hospital show they do there. They do some kind of like doctor show that I obviously don't watch. But I started following what happened to him, as well as what happened to Andrew Cuomo, his brother, Chris Cuomo.
Chris, yeah.
Because I wanted to see what kinds of treatments they took, how their illness progressed, and this actor, who, most of these actors are very progressive. You would think that if they're going to be taking hydrochloroquine and promoting it as something that, they know there's a lot of controversy about, especially because the president has been promoting it. For actors, especially on the left, to be saying, look, I know there's a lot of controversy around this product, but I took this hydroxychloroquine. It was given to me, and I feel that it's the reason why I'm here doing so well today. If we politicize everything, then we don't have any balance in receiving information. And I think Andrew Cuomo, looking at the possibility of using this medication for his state, is a smart and open-minded thing to do. As I have been saying from the very beginning, I believe that the president has information that we don't. I've said that I think that there's obviously some benefit to some people because they wouldn't just be, giving this to so many different people like they did in that Texas nursing home without us finding out that there were dead bodies all over the place. Incidentally, I never knew that Chris Cuomo was taking quinine.
Yeah.
That was a sick burn from Miss McEnany.
Well, plus the way she was responding to me, it seemed odd to me. When she first, your defenses, you talk about the comedians on late night television. I mean, it's like Jimmy Kimmel said this. It's like, who cares what Jimmy Kimmel says, and these other people. And then having Chris Cuomo, saying this, and his brother, who is the governor, is doing this. It's like, why don't you just put out the information you have that supports what the president says instead of fighting with these guys?
I think it's a valid thing because the late night crowd definitely wanted to dismiss. I mean, it was a shocking announcement by the president. The fact that the president did it, I think, speaks to the testimony from the whistleblower, because as we learned, Mr. Bright only approved this drug for hospital use.
Mm-hmm.
So the president coming out and saying, I wanted this to be widely available for people, even without a COVID diagnosis, as a prophylactic. And by the way, I'm taking this as a prophylactic right now, and I have been for a week and a half. That's a really, really powerful move. It's a powerful move. It's definitely going to have everyone watching his every move. I mean, like, how much stronger of an endorsement can you give something than saying, I'm using it as a prophylactic and I'm doing fine?
Yep.
I mean, by the way, after this story came out, a story about a woman who's been, by the way, she has lupus, who's been taking this medication, hydroxychloroquine, for 19 years, came out to try to discredit, I think, what the president has been saying about hydroxychloroquine, saying she got COVID.
Oh.
Now, if she's been taking hydroxychloroquine for 19 years, isn't she supposed to be protected from COVID? I will just remind folks that the president said he wasn't just taking hydroxychloroquine. He said he was taking it in conjunction with the Z-Pak as well as zinc. And some people say that the absorption of the zinc, which helps bring down the viral load, especially when you're just starting with this virus, are key in order to prevent and, stave off the greater risks of COVID-19. So with all of that said, let's go to our next numbers.
Oh, North Dakota.
North Dakota.
North Dakota had a bad day yesterday. Their numbers are always a day old, remember?
Oh, yeah.
So yesterday, 4 people died in Cass County. A man in his 60s, a man in his 70s, a man in his 80s, and a man in his 60s. Now, also the same day, there were in Cass County, there was 49 new cases in Cass County. Again, Cass County is a county that Fargo's in. It's a county across the river. It's basically our community. And where we stand now in North Dakota is we are at 2,095 positive. There's 102 people that tested positive, more people that tested positive from yesterday. And there are total deaths for 49 and 4 individual from yesterday that are added to that. I believe in the governor's press conference the other day, he said they have to figure out what's going on in Cass County because the numbers keep on going up.
He said he's going to come down here.
He's going to come down here and I don't know what he going to do, like shoot people out of the bars or what, And it's like a lot of elder people are dying, but there's they don't, I haven't looked at their breakdown of age of the positives, there's a lot of young people that have this also in Fargo. Right.
And again, most of the young people are not having the drastic effects and the very serious symptoms. But one of the things that is being looked at a lot more closely is what is going on with the information being collected so they can trace people with this virus. The contact tracing we talked about.
Oh, yeah.
Many of these apps, it has been learned recently, not only are collecting data, which can be used later. I told you that it becomes activated when you become positive. But they're sharing information with law enforcement, and a lot of people have a problem with that. This is sparking concern, especially among communities of color, but really among everybody. Nobody wants people to know where they've been and who they've been hanging out with, and they especially don't want law enforcement to be given that information. Mm-hmm. And by the way, it turns out that at least 10 states go further than sharing the locations of the places. If you go back to that graphic there, you'll see that it says that the information is being shared with law enforcement and first responders. first responders and law enforcement so that they have a chance. They get the addresses. So you know, before you end up at address XYZ, there is a COVID positive person in there. They don't tell you who, but most states are sharing the addresses of COVID positive people from this data. And at least 10 of these states are going further and sharing the names of the individual that are COVID positive. Guess which states those 10 are? Well, they include North Dakota, also Iowa, Colorado, Louisiana, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, South Dakota, and Tennessee. Wisconsin was briefly doing it, but they stopped earlier this month. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about your information being shared if you're COVID positive with law enforcement and first responders? This question was put to our local TV station's program Point of View, POV Now, and my colleague over there, Chris Berg, asked the audience, if you test positive for COVID-19, North Dakota and other states are sharing your personal information, including your address, with law enforcement, and he left out first responders. What's your point of view? Here are some of the comments. I'd love to hear my audience's point of view on this too. Here's what someone said. This is misleading. They're sharing with first responders, not just law enforcement. Nice way to incite fear. I think even if you just know that your information is being shared with anyone, that can be, fear-inducing, right? Because as MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund's lawyer, President Thomas Sands, said, we should all question why information needs to be provided to law enforcement, whether there's a danger there of misuse by law enforcement. And also, people just don't want their privacy being violated. Here's another comment about what they think of this. And someone else responded, I'm keeping all these names out so that people can be anonymous. And then someone else said, I see nothing wrong with knowing who's infected. In fact, if I was infected, I would share the news so others who may have come into contact with me will know to get tested. It certainly isn't something to be ashamed of. Nobody gets the virus on purpose, nor should they be criticized for having it. I think that's a good point. Yeah. I don't think people should be stigmatized if they get the virus, because people need support. People need help. People need information. I've interviewed and talked to many people that have COVID, and their entire families have COVID, and they feel very isolated. People treat them like lepers. That's not a good thing. We need to make sure that we are giving support to those who fall ill to this disease. But how do you feel about the idea of your name and your address being given out? Do you think you would go so far as to notify everyone if you had COVID, so anyone that came into contact with you would also know? How do you feel?
I think we need to know more information. I don't think we need to know down to the person, but I think we need to know like where these cases are. I mean, it's like, are people doing the staying indoors for 14 days, isolating themselves? We need to know that data, because all these cases in Fargo, where are they? I mean, they're not all in the nursing homes, are they? I know there's a lot of nursing homes that are getting positive cases, but I don't know if there's 400 and some people are out in nursing homes. I've seen positive cases with a lot lower ages. Where are these people getting this? I think that we need to see patterns better, down to the specific of where the person is and where they are at the moment and being followed and stuff. I don't know. I mean, but maybe to really stop this and to get a hold of this, we have to give up those liberties to get a hold of this and then go back to the way it was, right?
Okay, let's look at another comment. Here's another comment. Why law enforcement? The beginning of martial law? Question mark, question mark, question mark. What happened to HIPAA? What happened to all the HIPAA rules? I thought confidentiality was so important. Evidently, our government is starting to turn laws off and on as they see fit, not the majority of people who are to determine laws. And here's another comment about first responders receiving this information. Knowing ahead of time who is COVID and who is not is not necessary. Not necessary. First responders should be going into each situation assuming there could be a positive case and take the necessary precautions every time. And finally, here's another one where someone says most people already don't want to get tested. They're definitely going to be more reluctant now. Every person has complained about not enough testing. I've asked if they've tried to get tested, and the answer every single time will shock you. It was a no. It's just the new complaint against our president. First, it was PPE, then ventilators, and now testing. But the problem is most people don't want to get tested. And you remember me telling you there was companies and individuals who would not want to be tested, who would not want to be tracked. I get it. I understand. People are very conflicted. Let's go to some of the comments. Of course, and I'm going to reiterate this, taking any medication, whether it's hydroxychloroquine or any other kind of medication, is something that you should consult with your doctor. It's a decision between you and your doctor. Many people are saying that they have family members or friends that have used the drug. Heather comments that her sister has lupus and MS, and she is taking this drug, but she doesn't go around running around shopping. Sharon says that her mother received a combination of zinc, Z-Pak, and hydrochloroquine. They administered it early on in her diagnosis and still lost her. Very sorry to hear that, Sharon. I'm very sorry for your loss. Nan McDan comments, and she says, the balance is testing, 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 tracing, tracing, tracing. The reactionary policy was made out of inadequate preparedness, not initiating a pandemic plan in which they had in hand from previous administration, letting an anything goes policy throughout the U.S., allowing politics to take precedence over science in the treatment of COVID-19, and science siding with politics at times instead of good. Efficate evidence-based trials instead of a shotgun attempt trials. I'm not going to read that other word. It's not like we don't have enough participants. And you know what? I believe that now we're going to have a lot more participation, both in the trials for hydroxychloroquine's early use and as a treatment, as well as the vaccine that is now being tried out. Let's see what else we have here. Hydroxychloroquine is not considered a prophylactic. Not yet, Kat. You're very right about that. They are definitely looking into it. Kelly comments, because they can talk about the president all the time, so I don't blame her. I don't blame her. Oh, Kelly, you're talking about Miss McEnany, the press secretary. I think that, she definitely has a right to address the pot shots that are being taken of the president right now with regard to his, what seems like a very sincere and earnest desire to see people get well. So let's take a look at how other people are reacting. One Iowa legislator, in fact, the oldest registered Iowa Republican legislator, has decided it's time for him to go to the left. Take a listen.
Really?
Yep. This is pretty shocking news.
I intend to change my voter registration from Republican to Democrat.
The GOP lawmaker is leaving his party for good over President Trump. He's the longest-serving Republican in Iowa's legislature, my old home state.
With the 2020 presidential election looming on the horizon, I feel as a Republican that I need to be able to support the standard bearer of our party.
This is Andy McKean.
Unfortunately, that is something I'm unable to do. I believe that it is just a matter of time before our country pays a heavy price for President Trump's reckless spending and short-sighted financial policies, his erratic, destabilizing foreign policy, and his disregard for environmental concerns. Furthermore, he sets, in my opinion, a poor example for the nation, and particularly for our young children, by personally insulting, often in a crude and juvenile fashion, those who disagree with him. Being a bully at a time when we're attempting to discourage bullying, his frequent disregard for the truth, and his willingness to ridicule or marginalize people for their appearance, ethnicity, or disability. I believe that his actions have coarsened political discourse, have resulted in unprecedented divisiveness, and have created an atmosphere that is a breeding ground for hateful rhetoric and actions. Some would excuse this behavior as telling it like it is and the new normal. If this is the new normal, I want no part of it. Unacceptable behavior should be called out for what it is, and Americans of all parties should insist on something far better in the leader of their country and the free world. When I get home to Jones County, I intend to change my voter registration from Republican to Democrat and will be joining the minority caucus. This has been a very, very difficult decision for me and has only come after considerable reflection, much prayer, and many restless nights. I've been a registered Republican for close to half a century, a Republican office holder for 35 years, and the longest serving Republican currently in the Iowa legislature, and am very proud of the many good things that the Republican Party has accomplished over many years. However, the time comes when you have to be true to yourself and follow the dictates of your conscience, and for me, that time has come. Thank you very much.
McKean has voted with Dems on labor rights and gun safety in recent years. Did you see his party switched leaves Iowa's GOP with a small 53 to 47 House majority? It's also endangering his own career. His district backed Trump 58 to 37. You see that legislator next to him, the woman?
Yep.
She looks like she was crying during that whole speech. I don't know what happened there. I definitely am curious to see what there's got to be a backstory to that. And I'm very curious because, Iowa's always been a very conservative state. I grew up there. And this was a really tough decision. So we have people on, all of the different, going through the pandemic and just having an emotional reaction to what's happening. Just as the reopening is causing people to have emotional reactions to how people are behaving once they're out and about.
Yeah.
Take a look at this video from a mall in Texas. Is this what you pictured when you thought safe distancing and taking safety precautions would be in
no
place?
No social distancing at all. Where's the mask? Where's the gloves? Like nothing happened.
Our early footage shows a crowded Houston mall with little regard for physical distancing.
The mall is completely, I could say, more than 25% full. This is how people treat the pandemic. In Texas, even with the cases rising, they're still like this. People can still sit anywhere they want to. This is the Galleria Mall of Houston, Texas. A lot of people not wearing masks or gloves.
It reopened May 1st, the Houston Mall, Galleria
Guy
Mall.
touched his nose.
Guy touched his nose.
Look at that. Social distancing at its best.
You're being sarcastic, actually.
So there's no way that someone calculates that you're coming inside the mall like nothing happened. Where the hell is going on? No social distancing at all. Where's the mask? Where's the gloves? Mask and gloves. No mask and gloves.
No.
Nothing.
For reopening, the mall touted new safety measures
Oh.
to local press, including an increased number of hand sanitizer dispensers, signs advocating for physical distancing, takeout only food court, and more.
Y'all doing right. Y'all doing right.
He's pointing at some people wearing masks there.
Yeah.
You see the little arrows on the ground?
Yep.
No social distancing at all.
We're doing everything we can to keep people safe and keep the virus mitigated. Kurt Webb.
From the Houston Mall.
Also to be limiting occupancy to just 25%.
This is more
How do
crowded
they
than a
measure
Walmart.
that?
I know. This obtained video filmed by a 27-year-old seemed to indicate
This
a
is
different
crazy.
story.
Yeah,
I'll be very
this
honest with you.
chaos out there.
Yeah,
I'm
How
kinda
can you
freaking
even
out,
control it though?
but stay
I know.
calm.
I was thinking the same thing. What are you going to do?
They're not even tracking people. They're only tracking people that go inside the stores. You can obviously see there's a line.
Right. But out in the common
No
areas,
6 feet. None whatsoever. You got people standing 2-3 feet apart.
yeah. My mother works at Chick-fil-A and she has no choice but to go back to work due to the fact that the mall reopened. If she didn't
Jesus
accept it,
Christ,
she
man.
wouldn't.
She'd lose her employment benefits
Yeah, I don't
because
wanna
being
touch
scared
the
of working
rails.
during the pandemic is not a good
Keep
enough
my
reason to,
balance.
to continue
wanna
receiving
touch nothing.
unemployment.
I don't want to touch anything. Approximately 2 weeks after the mall and other places reopened, Texas reported its largest single-day increase in COVID cases to date.
People still standing and eating next to each other.
One factor for the spike in cases
That's
is
the
an
only
increase
thing.
in
I
testing.
don't understand.
They conducted over 300,000 tests, approximately the same number it was conducted for all of March and April. However, this rise in cases has health experts worried as most public places such as gyms and museums plan to
People still
reopen.
bringing their kids. Oh no, this is not good. This is no good. This is no good. Oh, no good.
Yeah, I'm not going to go to the mall anytime
Yeah,
soon.
let's not go to the mall.
But of course, I have asthma, so I have an underlying condition. I would not go and put myself at risk. I think if you have an underlying condition and you have, diabetes or heart disease or something that puts you at higher risk for dying from this disease if you should catch it, you need to take every precaution to protect yourself. And going out to businesses where they may not be enforcing social distancing, may or may not be wearing, masks and gloves, may or may not be taking the precautions of having everyone come in and, sanitize their hands and all of that, then you probably don't want to go out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it's going to be really, really scary. Speaking of scary,
Yeah.
Michigan had the most terrifying flooding in probably 500 years.
Really?
This is the 500-year flood.
From all the rain?
They had a lot of excess rain. They had to evacuate approximately 10,000 people after two of its dams, which were built back in 1924,
Oh, boy.
finally broke. By the way, this is extreme catastrophic flooding that they experienced. This 500-year flood happened to hit the towns of Edenville, Sanford, and Midland hardest. The emergency from the flood was declared by Governor Whitmer, and there were, of course, upwards of 10,000 people evacuated. You should know that there are approximately 2,600 dams in the state of Michigan,
Wow.
of which about 2/3 are older than the typical 50-year designed life. In the next 5 years, 80% of Michigan's dams will be over 50 years old.
Wow.
So they have a problem starting with this mess. Take a look at this aerial video of the dams breaking, and it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah.
You see there the water just pouring through. If you pay attention to those trees, you'll see the force of the river just knocks them down. See that?
Yeah, yeah.
Just
A lot of water coming through.
like they're nothing, like they're toothpicks. Just fells those trees. It's so horrifying. Let me show you what it looks like in the town of Sanford, one of those 3 towns hardest hit. Here is video footage of what the flooding looks like in town. This is from Local 4 News.
Wow. The water's way up on the buildings. Almost to
Top of the speed limit sign there.
yeah. It's mid-range in the doorways.
Oh, higher than that, I would say. 4 to 5 feet up to the side of the... Oh, my gosh. Some of those buildings are collapsed back there.
Yeah.
Cars are underwater.
Wow.
Signs are underwater. These are all still images. You can see the vehicles
And this came
completely
overnight.
submerged.
This came in like one day. It wasn't a slow rise. You couldn't prepare. It's just like you had to get out.
No, not at all. People just had to run. This alert that people needed to evacuate immediately or be caught in this terrible flood came in the night time.
Yeah.
Last night. The Dow Chemical Company declaring an emergency. The company also stated that they had emergency preparedness plan deployed, that the water was commingling with some of their chemical ponds.
Oh, boy.
But they did put out a statement just before we went on air saying that the communities do not need to fear from the chemicals at this time. There is no danger, immediate danger to the people in the communities. I don't know how safe that is.
Yeah, really.
But that's what they did say right before we went on air. Meanwhile, this is what was tweeted by President Trump. And of course, you know, people in the region were very concerned about this. I saw a lot of people very concerned about this tweet from President Trump. Someone retweeted this saying, as a concerned citizen, this is a person that lives in Michigan, the first thing I did today was check to see how Midland was doing after learning about the dams breaking last night. Look, there's a Trump tweet. At least he's saying something to the people of Michigan. Oh, it's not about the flood.
Oh, boy.
Hashtag 25th Amendment. Here is the tweet from Donald Trump. Breaking, Michigan sends absentee ballots to 7.7 million people ahead of the primaries and the general election. This was done illegally and without authorization by a rogue Secretary of State. I will ask to hold up funding to Michigan if they want to go down this voter fraud path. This is on the day that there is a flood.
Yeah.
So remember when we had wildfires in California and the president made some kind of similar veiled threats that he might withhold federal funding from the state. It's not unusual for the president, and also I think he's made some veiled statements about withholding, funding during the pandemic to different, blue states that he and other people in his administration feel have mismanaged funds. Whatever you think about the flood or the mail-in ballots or anything, the fact that these statements happened during an emergency, during a pandemic, or now during this flood, it is of great concern to a lot of folks. Check out that on Twitter, the comments about this Trump tweet. People have, their hearts are going out to the people of Michigan. And right now, I think everyone wants to focus making sure that Michiganders have the support of the rest of the country. Meanwhile, in Florida, NPR is reporting that a data scientist that created the dashboard to track Florida's cases of the coronavirus says that she was fired from the state's health department for refusing to, quote, manually change data to drum up support for the plan to reopen.
I see.
But Is that correct? I don't know. But this, the numbers for Florida, they haven't been what was predicted. And of course, mitigation, containment, staying at home orders, all of that probably contributed. But DeSantis came out firing back. This is what he's had to say. Governor DeSantis.
Our data is available. Our data is transparent. In fact, Dr. Birx has talked multiple times about how Florida has the absolute best data. So any insinuation otherwise is just typical partisan narrative trying to be spun. And part of the reason is that because you got a lot of people in your profession who waxed poetically for weeks and weeks about how Florida was going to be just like New York. Wait 2 weeks, Florida's going to be next. Just like Italy, wait 2 weeks. Well, hell, we're 8 weeks away from that, and it hasn't happened. Not only do we have a lower death rate, well, we have way lower deaths generally. We have a lower death rate than the Acela Corridor, D.C., everyone up there. We have a lower death rate than the Midwest, Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio. But even in our region, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida has the lower death rate. And I was the #1 landing spot from tens of thousands of people leaving the #1 hot zone in the world to come to my state. So we've succeeded, and I think that people just don't want to recognize it because it challenges their narrative, it challenges their assumption, so they got to try to find a boogeyman. Maybe it's that there are black helicopters circling the Department of Health. If you believe that, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you.
Last question.
Now, let me just say this. You can't hide deaths.
Yeah.
This isn't China. This is the United States of America. If you're trying to coerce scientists, if you're trying to shut people down, shut people up, the American people are going to get hip to it. If people are dying, if people are disappearing, we're going to find out.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be able to hide that. You're not going to be able to hide new symptoms. So for those of you who are kind of freaking out, remember you have to find that balance between what you're hearing and what you're seeing.
Yeah.
There is room for both. There is room for the possibility that there are still hotspots and rising number of sickness and death in every single state in America, and areas, especially the rural ones, where we don't have rising cases, where we don't have increased deaths. And so, for those reasons, I think it's good for us to pull back and get some perspective on what has been happening. I think that a lot of media, I think that a lot of, scientists, data gatherers, information gatherers are very cautious, and rightfully so, because this is a novel coronavirus. We don't know what it's going to do. We don't know how it's going to present in different age groups, in different people with comorbidities. And so for those reasons, we're very cautious, and we want to err on the side of caution rather than err on the side of, willy-nilly, because lives are hanging in the balance. But at the same time, there's also businesses and the economy that are tanking at a very precipitous rate. I don't know how we recover from this right away. I think there isn't really a way for us to do it quickly. I think it's going to take time, years probably, before we can recover. In the meantime, we need to be mindful of every new piece of information that we receive, including the fact that COVID, a month after we've had peaks in many states, is starting to attack children that have had the COVID, that have had the antibodies test, and they've already had COVID, and they're having some kind of toxic shock-like response to this virus. Check out this video. It is now appearing in about half of the states.
Dariana Dyson was just 15 when she started complaining about stomach pain and a rash.
It happened so fast. I never thought that taking my daughter in the hospital for stomach pain
I wouldn't be walking out of there with her.
Within days, the Baltimore teen was dead, the latest victim of the newly discovered multi-system inflammatory syndrome. Dariana had tested positive for COVID antibodies.
I hope that can save another child. People need to really understand that this kills people.
Today, the CDC held a briefing call with doctors on what it's learning about the illness, now found in at least 24 states and 9 countries around the world. Cases seem to be peaking about a month behind COVID-19. Many of the children didn't know they had coronavirus, suggesting the illness comes from an overactive immune response. In New York City alone, there are now 147 cases.
I think that's the tip of the iceberg.
Long Island's Cohen's Children's Medical Center saw many of the early cases. Almost 80% had no underlying condition. Nearly all had gastrointestinal symptoms. And the hospital saw success with a plasma product called IVIG, which helps calm an overactive immune response. It's one of the things doctors in Louisiana used on 12-year-old Juliet Daly, who went into cardiac arrest before responding to treatment. She's now out of the hospital, and at her latest checkup showed no signs of permanent heart damage.
They're saying that it looks pretty normal.
She came in, really near death. And within a matter of days, we were able to get her off the ventilator, breathing on her own. It was one of those moments that you really want to celebrate.
Hope tonight.
I'm just so happy that she has a bright future.
That treatments can work if doctors can catch it in time. Kristen Dahlgren, NBC News, New York.
And catching this inflammatory disease that is somehow connected to COVID is crucial because, we have to kind of shift our thinking. This is where we have to find that balance. Before we're told, thankfully, this does not affect children in a dangerous way. Most children that get this, most adults even that get this, are going to have mild symptoms, maybe in some cases no symptoms at all. And that's what makes this inflammatory disease, this multi-system inflammatory syndrome, so dangerous, because most parents wouldn't think, given what we've already been told, that even if their child is having symptoms of COVID, which can be all over the map, they're not going to get seriously injured. They're not going to be hospitalized. It turns out with this multi-system inflammatory syndrome, getting your kids to the hospital and getting them attended to right away is crucial. And they do need hospitalization. Kids need hospitalization for this multi-system inflammatory disease, or MIS-C as it is being called. It is a complication of COVID-19 infection. It needs immediate attention and will probably need hospitalization. You need to protect your kids. So, what if your kid is having nausea and stomach ache? You saw that heart-wrenching story from that mom who's probably just kicking herself now that she didn't think to take her kid to the hospital for a stomach ache and nausea. How would anyone know?
Plus the numbers are going up. I mean, Governor Cuomo, he just said there was 147 cases.
Just the other day, there
was
only
only 90-some, and they're talking about how small the number is. So things change every day. Every time we put the numbers up, we do them a few hours before the show, and Cindy reads the very current numbers, and the graphics I put up are actually, 1,000 behind on some of the things that have increased in a couple of hours every day. So it's really saddening to see how quickly things are going up. And you're listening to KPPP, LP 88.1, Fargo Moorhead, adding local color to your airwaves.
We will definitely share the link to the story so that you guys can all go and check that out for yourselves. But I want to tell you, this is not just something we are contending with in the United States.
Exactly.
All over the globe, people are dealing with coronavirus. And just like here in the U.S., where people have been assaulted, arrested, fined, what have you, for going out in public, for not shopping with the mask on, etc. This is happening in other countries as well. Check out this woman in Puerto Vallarta. You know, that's where my mom is right now.
Yeah, exactly.
I was just like, God, I hope she stays in her house.
Mm-hmm.
Puerto Vallarta, if you're not familiar with it, Puerto Vallarta is right there on the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So
on the western side of Mexico.
You literally leave your home. A lot of it is like right there next to the ocean.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously there's a lot of people that are, you know, they go there for the beaches, for vacationing. All the beaches are closed right now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this woman went down to, you know, photograph the beach, or it didn't go well. Take a look. The police in Puerto Vallarta submitted her because she would not, according to the news source at Jalisco Noticias, this is in the state of Jalisco, they said that the beaches were closed and she would not leave the area.
Okay.
And this is a couple. She wasn't alone. Her husband or boyfriend or whatever is filming this. The police officers, according to the news report, says that the officers asked the couple to leave the area because the beaches were closed, and they claim they started to leave the area, but according to police, the woman had a physical altercation with police officers, and they had to use physical force to get her to submit. She was subsequently arrested. In this video, you can see that they're also threatening to arrest her boyfriend or husband. Take a look.
¿Por qué la están deteniendo? ¿Por qué
They're
la están
choking her.
deteniendo?
Take a look at
¿Por
this.
qué la están deteniendo?
He keeps asking, why are you
¿Por qué la
detaining
están
her?
deteniendo?
He's not
¿Por
wearing
qué
a
no la
mask.
está deteniendo?
And
¿Por
then
qué
just
la están deteniendo?
fling her
Porque venía
onto
con
the
ella,
thing.
sí tiene, soy un ciudadano.
Oh, you're with her? Let me take you too.
Nada más que yo soy aliado del gobierno
He's
federal.
like, oh yeah, you can arrest me, but I'm an ally of the federal government. If you're going to film, do it from a distance, the officer says. You can't speak, he says. This is the police that we have here in Puerto Vallarta. So what do you think of that, Duke?
That's crazy.
They just walked over to the beach to take pictures, and now she's in the back of a police car after being physically assaulted and choked. Did you see they were choking her?
Yeah. Yeah, she was.
And then, of course, none of them were wearing masks. So if she had, okay, the whole reason for closing down the beach is because of COVID, right?
Exactly.
If she had COVID, they're all probably going to get it now. It's just
exactly
nuts to me. Oh my gosh. I think we have to figure out a way. This is where we're talking about finding the balance. Can we find a way of keeping people out of areas that we don't want open yet without the physical altercations?
Remember the guy with the stick that was driving by and hitting people in the legs with a stick on his motorcycle, saying, go home, go home. It was like India or somewhere. Stuff like that, or just the people with the water cannons to spray them when they aren't supposed to be where they are. They could take in other measures that aren't like grabbing them and throwing them in the back of the truck. There's other people back there. Were they the other beachgoers too, or to throw them all in a little tank together and spread COVID around?
I have no idea. Let's take a look at this other video from Mexico. This is how things are being handled. This is in a cemetery, an aerial view of a cemetery. Things are getting worse, especially around the city.
They're digging fresh graves in the cemetery of Iztapalapa district in Mexico City. Outside, the hearses are queuing to get in, but with the danger of infection all around, Ramon continues to sell his flowers.
We're living day to day. We have nothing saved, and if I stop working, what will I eat? What will my family eat?
Iztapalapa is Mexico's most populous district and the hardest hit by COVID. Despite that, life and commerce hasn't stopped. The Mexican quarantine's definitely been of the soft variety, with people encouraged rather than forced to stay home, and authorities often turning a blind eye towards those breaking the rules.
We're not allowed to open until the start of June, but the truth is we can't last out anymore.
The country's just had its highest daily number of cases. That hasn't stopped Mexico City's government announcing plans to reopen the capital, but districts like this one never really shut down in the first place. Just look at the amount of people and cars that are out on the streets. I should mention that not every business here is open. Many of those that can afford to close have done so, but it's pretty clear that in the more working class areas of the city, there are a lot of people out and about. Eduardo's kept on driving his bus through the pandemic. He says some of his passengers refuse to even acknowledge there's a virus at all.
The people that get on board without face masks, they're foolish, they don't get it. But unfortunately, I make my living from them, so I have to put up with it.
Top health officials say more and more Mexicans are going out before the end of quarantine. But the same health officials are adamant that cases will go down any day now. Those two statements don't seem to match up, especially here in Iztapalapa. John Holman, Al Jazeera.
Yes.
Notice how the people there, that bus driver, he just knows that there's a percentage of the people that ride his bus that don't even believe the coronavirus is real. They think it's a hoax. Mm-hmm. They don't think it exists. So they're not going to wear masks. They're not going to do anything to protect him or any of his other passengers. And he knows, and his passengers know, they have to put up with that.
Yeah.
If they want to continue to live and exist and do commerce, they have to put up with that. They don't have any other options.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, around the world, people are dealing with the coronavirus in different ways. In Nicaragua, coffin sales are up. Take a look at how the coffin building business is doing in Nicaragua. While Nicaraguans only report 17 COVID cases, coffin makers are making a killing. In the last 60 years, there hasn't been such a spike in coffin sales. Some funeral homes are simply desperate for them. We communicate with each other. The funeral owners do. We lend each other vehicles and things like that. Just last night after 5 p.m., we buried around 200 people. And that was without relatives, without candles, nothing, just without painting. There are moments when you can't even rest. You give up. You're exhausted physically, mentally. There's no joy for us. And seeing such pandemic, so much death. Some are saying, oh, but you're making so much money. No, it's actually quite sad to see so many people dying these days. The Pan American Health Organization is accusing Nicaragua of not giving the correct data.
Well, if they have all those coffins, it's like,
Mexico's doing the same. They're not reporting the numbers. They're not telling people how many people are dying, how many people are being cremated. Nicaragua, a lot of Latin America is having this problem. Of course, Bolivia is having this trouble. And in Colombia, they've turned gurneys, hospital beds, into cardboard beds. And the reason is they transform into this. Take a look. The transformative hospital beds made out of cardboard, light cardboard, created in Colombia. The Colombian design company is making cardboard hospital beds. Take a look. Why is it so small? They can be easily turned into a coffin if the patient dies. Thank you. See, you just push down after the person dies. They're using a person there. These cardboard coffins are made for people with coronavirus. It means that when the patient dies, medics won't have to move the body. See, that turns into a box. The biodegradable dual-purpose beds are usable for 18 months and are able to hold up to 150 kilograms of body weight. Wow. Hospital beds and coffins are in short supply in the state of Amazons. ABC displays say they can manufacture 3,000 beds in 1 month. And then they just pick up the cardboard box and off they go.
Wow.
That was from the Telegraph. I don't know about you, but if I was a patient going to a hospital and they put me in one of those cardboard beds,
I wouldn't have much faith. You know.
What kind of message does that send to your patient about their survivability rate? I would really be terrified to be forced to stay in a bed that can turn into a coffin. Yeah. I mean, I think it's practical. Obviously, it's smart, but it sure is gut-wrenching, isn't it?
It is.
Well, folks, to leave you on a happier note, I always told you I want to see all the innovations out there on how businesses are doing their jobs during the coronavirus pandemic. And I think this one is more jest than reality, but it is a funny take on how to perform massages. For all of you out there craving your massages and your massage table, here's one interesting take on how you get it done.
I bet that they're doing Reiki there, aren't they?
No, but that is a rake. This is like a guy wearing the coronavirus clothes, and then they're putting gel on the back.
Yeah. It's got fake hands and gloves.
On the ends of broom handles far away. It's got a water bottle on the guy's head. You see the person doing the
he's doing some
shiatsu massage there with the hands.
Oh, hilarious.
Yeah.
Broom handles and a plunger. Plunger to pull on the muscles.
Oh, that's like those cups those hot cups they put on there.
He's throwing balls onto the back of the back.
Yeah, look at that.
And bigger ones too. Boom.
What are they, like tennis balls?
What's this?
I don't know. Some kind of metal rod is being used to poke the person's back.
Yep.
The gloves are on again.
Yep.
Now a broom is being used on the face.
Hopefully it's new.
I don't know if I'm ready for this kind of a massage. I think I'll stick to getting massages from Duke.
Yes.
You can give me a massage. I will give you a massage. I think that's how we're going to do it. No massages at the spa for us. We'll have to do in-home spa treatments for ourselves. Yep. Well, folks, I hope that you are loving on your close family and friends, giving them the self-care, the loving care that they need while we wait for this pandemic to pass. That's all I have for you this evening here on A Mexican Crossing Lines with your hosts, Cindy Gomez-Schempp
and Duke Gomez-Schempp.
You're listening to 88.1 FM, KPPPLP Fargo-Moorhead, where we are adding local color to your airwaves. Have a great night. God bless. We'll see you next time.